the Francisco Manuel dos Santos Foundation is happy to present today a study on artificial intelligence that was made by João Castro, that is here today also to present it. It is a result of a partnership between Francisco Manuel dos Santos Foundation and Google International, and forms part of a network of different think tanks around Europe, especially in Southern Europe, including Spain, Italy, and Greece. This research focuses on artificial intelligence in Portugal and looks at its presence in several sectors, across sectors, big companies, small companies, and startups. I will let João present the study later. But I think, and for the Fundação Francisco Manuel dos Santos Foundation, this is a very important study that reflects our engagement in the digital economy, the digitalization of our companies, and the participation of the Portuguese companies in a larger effort across Europe towards a fully digitalized economy. So it's a pleasure for us to be supporting this study. It's also a pleasure to have this partnership with Google, and we look forward to the presentation. I will now hand the floor to Sara Sá. Thank you for being here, that will moderate this discussion. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Gonçalo. It's a pleasure to be here. Let's start with the author of this very thoroughly report, João Castro. João is an engineer, but he also has a PhD in systems engineering by the MIT. And at the moment, he's a professor at Nova School of Business Economics and also has a vast experience in project management with close collaboration with companies in Portugal. Thank you, João. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sara. And thank you also, Gonçalo, and to the Francisco Manuel dos Santos Foundation for the opportunity to do this, to conduct this study. I didn't do it alone. I have a co-author, Vasco Teles, and it was a great opportunity to do this. Me and my co-author were somewhat biased. We are engineers, electrical engineers by training, and so technology is our comfort zone, or so to say, our area where we decided to specialize many years ago. But the pertinence or the opportunity to do this study to these times to us was very significant, since we believe that this is one of the technologies that, after we went and looked at this, it has tremendous opportunities for impact in society. And so that's what we tried on the outset to go in to look at and see if what we are seeing from our technology mindset is something that it actually is out there. And we had this opportunity, and so this is a great opportunity to look to this. We started the study in January 2020, and it was a very odd year, 2020.
To say the least.
Yes, very, very peculiar. And all the things that we had planned, and the things that we wanted to look at, and Gonçalo kind of enumerated them already, was looking at academia and trying to see what kind of research, what kind of teaching and learning is happening in Portugal surrounding this technology, but also then in the economy with regards with companies, incumbents or large companies or SMEs, but even startups, and seeing how much of this is happening in Portugal. And we were also comparing with our peers, and Gonçalo mentioned that in other countries, but also around the world. The way that we set it up clearly was not prepared for what happened and the lockdowns that happened across the world, and so we had to adapt. But one of the things that our approach of what we wanted to do is just this kind of to explain how the study was conducted, so the background of how the things that we did and how we did it, to then share a little bit about what some of our findings, without wanting to spoil too much what was in the report, and so people still will want to read it. Essentially what happened is that suddenly when we were out to go into the field, that everyone disappeared, because everyone was scrambling to try to get their organizations back together, trying to figure out how to operate in this new world with having to deal with a pandemic. And so it was hard for a little bit, that the different people that had told us that they wanted to talk with us, and that they suddenly were not available because they were trying to save jobs and everything. And so it was a different study from what we planned right at the beginning. But nevertheless, I think that we found some very interesting things, and as the new normal, as came to be coined the way that people operated in 2020. we started to be able to have these conversations again. Maybe not as many as we wish that we would have in the beginning, but still I think they were very insightful, the different things that we looked at. And so I think that's part also of the acknowledgements is all these different people who contributed. Some of them are not named in the report, others are named because they allowed us to be named, that they took the time to help to bring this to light. And so I think that should also be here noted, that this acknowledgement to all these different people that contributed to this report. Now, some of the different things that we looked at. Well, the first one was we tried to look at it in different spaces. So what's happening with companies and what's also happening with regards to universities or academia. And we were delighted, and maybe this is too strong of a word because we actually didn't make any comparison, but it's more of a judgment call now, we found numerous labs in different universities across the whole country that are working and are not ignoring, they actually are trying to develop either technologies or trying to take into account new algorithms, new processes, but also the impact that these have. So it's not just essentially just an engineering thing or a computation problem. Actually are looking at the implications, the ramifications that will have in an economy with regards to jobs, with regards to how do we operate in a society, and so at an ethical level with the different things that artificial intelligence can have. I need to step back a little bit, so all of them are working on artificial intelligence, but so what artificial intelligence? What is artificial intelligence? And that's something that, one of the things that we wrote in the report is like, there is no precise definition of what artificial intelligence is, especially because also the word intelligence, what is an intelligent sentient being and what is not, can lead us.
It's a big discussion.
It would be a big discussion, and we could be here all day and not get to any conclusion. But I think there is a sense of a lot about what it could be or what it promises to be. And so the many different institutions all across the country are looking at this. And also they are training people. Programs and curricula are set up to train people who are going through these programs to then be able to continue to develop these different technologies, these different processes, and different approaches to either gain new insights or either to design and develop new products, new processes, new services to allow things. And that's one of the, I think, the fundamental issues concerning the artificial intelligence, or the promise for artificial intelligence, is this of using a new wave or a new availability of computational technology that allows people and organizations to tackle a set of problems that finally are actually addressable in the real world, and it's no longer just something that we could. They came out of the science fiction. No, it's no longer fiction. It actually is science, and so we actually can address some of these issues. And it's finally possible to do that, to process large amounts of data, to try to extract knowledge that is hidden within that data, and with that knowledge, actually be able to create this impact. And so we found that it was very interesting to see that this is happening a little bit across the whole space in the academia in Portugal. But as I also already noted, like we did not do a comparison with other countries to be able to say that, well, we are ahead of the other countries. And
it was not the goal of the report to make a comparison.
It wasn't. It was trying to see from Portugal. So what are we seeing that is happening within Portugal and sharing that with the world? So this is an easy comparison that could be made, but it's something that we actually did not do in the report, and so we don't look at that. But we were happy to see that there are so many different labs that have been working for this, and it's just not a recent fad. A lot of them have been working on this for several years, and so artificial intelligence is something that it's been around for several decades now, and it has come and gone out of fashion. And a lot of these research institutions have continued to work even when it was out of fashion. So there's a lot of expertise there. So
And the name was there already on the beginning?
Yeah,
from the start.
It actually was coined in the very first conference that was held in New England. They actually worked around this idea that is it possible to have an artificial intelligence? And so they opened up this Pandora's box of what is intelligence, what is artificial intelligence, what is actually a thinking machine, is it possible or is it not, and everything. So it's been around for a few decades already, but now it's coming, it has matured, right? It is coming like that. We now actually have computational capabilities to process huge amounts of data in real time for some problems that you actually can do. And so maybe jumping ahead, but we have startups from Portugal that actually are looking, when you're doing your a transaction in a store and you give the store your credit card, and they're actually going to try to figure out if that is not a fraudulent use of your credit card, because maybe someone had stolen your card. And they actually are able to do that just the time that you don't realize that you're waiting for the confirmation. They actually run these algorithms to try to detect if it is out of, if it's an odd use of your card, and so if the pattern doesn't match, and it's happening right there. So it's not something like, okay, let's take all the data that we had from the last few years, and it's going to take a ton of years to process, and we'll finally be able to know that it was going to rain a week ago, right? We could have lived a week ago and we knew that it rained. No, this is some of these things are working extremely fast with getting information from sensors all over the place, from many different types of things, and so we have startups working on that. And so that is, for instance, one of the promises that this technology that is happening. And so I'll take that and run with talking about talking a little bit about academia, but now talking a little bit about the economy. And to say that, yes, we also have many different startups. So this example that I already gave you, Feedzai is the
it's one of the companies mentioned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there are others for other areas of application. So computer vision, so small companies, small startups, like there's a couple of people that are taking computer vision technology that's mature enough, and they actually are starting vending machines. They're running vending machines that can recognize if you're there or what type of products you're taking out from the vending machine, and can charge you for exactly the product that you took. Not only what you took, but also if you inspect it and if you put it back and you put it back in a different place. And in this case, the startup is Reckon AI. But you have startups looking at all these different opportunities of how to use technology. So bridge these worlds of, okay, we have the science, we have the technology, what can we use it for? Okay? And so they're finding these opportunities, these places where they can use it to create these products, to create these services, and enabling new types of opportunities for things that are for us to use. Like, of course, one of the big ones is autonomous driving. That is something that could be around the corner. It's been around the corner for at least the last 5 years. But that is one example of enabling new types of services and products that we could be using. Related to that, then we need to look at, okay, how do we absorb that in society? Yeah? And so this is also something that we saw when we were studying this, also because we were experiencing a world that was changing very quickly, and people were adapting very quickly. And so one of the things that we saw that was interesting was some places where, so some of these things can help the accounting department in an organization to process all the different invoices and different payables that they have. And there's some resistance in some cases. And we found that one that I think is absolutely fascinating. This person was actually the largest people resisting, or the strongest to this process, where she did not want to move from paper, right, to an electronic system. And the thing that she was attached to is that she had a sense of purpose and of accomplishment when doing her task. Okay? The task would be exactly the same, but she got a reward whenever she was doing it on paper, and one of these clients got paid or invoiced, and she was done with it, she would get this affordance of being able to rip paper. Okay?
But there are studies on it, on the effect of having lists and feeling that you've accomplished that task. So
yes, and so in this case, everyone that wasn't there was thinking that, well, of course we're going to be more productive and everything, but the pleasure, the enjoyment, the
feeling of accomplishment
that this person who was responsible for this had would have been stripped away. And so she was resisting this change, which is interesting. In other cases, there are other areas where, for instance, we saw plants, industrial plants, where they're doing things like sorting different types of products as they go along. And usually relied on having a human inspector there as this part, right, this widget would come along to say if it was defective or not. Interesting thing is that they were able to replace and make it much more efficient by using computer vision to be able to detect that automatically. And so it's able to process way more, many more of these widgets. But still, it would fail every now and then. So you would have to have a watchdog, a human watchdog on the machine. So whenever the machine was lost, and like this is an odd case, I need help from the human was still there. Okay, so you got promoted to watching over the machine. The odd thing in this case, though, was that this person needed to monitor the machine, and so they were given a computer with a monitor. The thing that they didn't realize, that the company, and we found it peculiar, is that this person used to work in the shop floor, right, next to where the widgets were going. And so they gave the computer, which could be anywhere, right? We have our guests who are not
in Porto, not here.
So they're not here with us today, and we can do this remotely. But they assigned the workplace of this person right next to the noisy machine in the shop floor. Okay. Like she could be in a desk somewhere else, in a nice office. She could be home. So this change of this is where she works is in the shop floor to be able, because the technology would allow that. Just simply they missed this opportunity to do that. Because it just didn't make sense to them. And so this is one of the things that I think is interesting to see. So the impacts of how people will explore and use this, how some of them will resist it, and are we actually able to see the magnitude of all the different changes that we can have, okay? And this is going to happen, and the other thing that we saw is that this is going to happen at many different levels. So the agility for the change, and I think that the year of the pandemic also showed that, is that a lot of times we've seen numerous studies about digital transformation and things like that. And simply there's a lot of resistance to change, right? Why should we change? Because we've always done it this way. We still can do this and everything.
It's human nature. It's
human nature. And so you need to recognize that is part of it. But we were forced to change, right? And so usually, I often have colleagues, and when we have this conversation, so is digital transformation good or not, and everything, and like to try to make the pitch for the case of how much better society could be. So I'm an optimist in that sense, because I believe that we could, with these tools, build a much better society. But often, like I'm probably not the best at pitching this idea to people because we still haven't changed that much. And well, Mother Nature helped us do the best of the pitches and showed that we can actually have these meetings remotely, and we can be so much more efficient and everything. And so it allowed us to change. And it changed at very different levels. It is not related to artificial intelligence, but there's another example that I write about, is this just supermarket it's a mom and pop supermarket, right? And so you'd say, like, well, they don't have access to large technologies. They're not going to do well with the pandemic, with everyone having to go home and being in lockdown. Well, they scrambled and they fought, and they found a different solution. So they didn't have to set up large e-commerce websites and whatever to be able to deliver. It's just one supermarket, right? And they just created an Excel spreadsheet, and they just sent it around. Word of mouth got it around to different people, and then you just email them the spreadsheet with whatever you wanted. It could still be able to operate. So you use digital tools to enable business. This has nothing to do with artificial intelligence, but it has a little bit to...
Good old Excel sheet.
No macros. It didn't have anything smart other than the smart of the people running the business and being able to figure out a way out of it, right? So need is the mother of invention, and they had that need. They had to keep doing business, and they found a way through technology to do that. So to say that given the willingness, the reasons to use some of these technologies, people will go after them. And so that's the optimist of, okay, let's build these things and let's do these things. Now, I talked about startups and this mom and pop supermarket. Now we have also large organizations, and they're actually exploring it, and we found some very interesting cases in Portugal also where they're leading in the way that what they're doing, the business that they're doing. But we also found those that are not leading, which was surprising. So one of the things that we saw that's more or less different people that we talked with that said that, well, one of the fundamental instruments or what feeds the machine other than just the electricity that makes it run and everything, is data. And so if you have large quantities of data for it to ingest, then that's going to be good to be able for it to train and to try to learn, and from that to do things. And we found industries which have large sets of data, retail, and there actually are in the vanguard, just because also maybe the dynamics in the Portuguese market and everything of the players that are existing, they actually are investing heavily on that, and they're trying to do things and exploring new ways of doing things, which I found, okay, that's good. So artificial intelligence from Portugal, we actually are not just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. We actually are driving some of these innovations. Okay? And so we're actually exporting already technology to other countries from Portugal from the retail sector, which I think is interesting if we're able to share what we've learned, right? Not necessarily giving new worlds to the world as we did
500 years ago.
But we're giving new technology and new solutions to people around the world, which I think is absolutely fascinating. But on the other hand, we found some organizations, surprisingly, that we thought that, well, they have huge amounts of data there, and they're scared of looking at it, because they are heavily regulated. And all the different things that they think that they could be able to do, they're scared of touching it. And so they're very, very naive in the sense that they're approaching these things. Naive is probably not the right word, but they're more concerned. So they're actually laggards in adopting this technology and really exploring that. So I think there's a good opportunity there of things that we saw in Portugal.
Maybe we can go to our fellows.
So sure.
And then we can keep...
Let me just maybe wrap up and to open the floor to our guests here to say that, well, all these different things then we need to take into account all these opportunities and everything. So I'm clearly biased in the sense that I'm an optimist about what technology can do and everything. There are dangerous uses for the technology, and those need to be recognized, right? You can collect large amounts of data from other people, from other companies and everything, and use it as a competitive advantage, if you will, an advantage against other people. And that's something that we need to be careful about. And so the final thing that I'd like to say is that we also found that this community that is debating this, and all the different people that we talked with, that they're aware of this. So it's not that we're all full steam ahead, naively using this technology because everything is just perfect. We're also aware, or the community is also aware of some of the dangers surrounding it. And so there is a big debate. And I think that's the final discussion, or final thing that almost everyone said, like, we need to talk more about this. We actually need to share more about our experiences, what we're learning, the dangers, the opportunities, and everything. So we need to get out of the zone of this is about people who control or are able to feel comfortable with technology, because this impacts everyone. And so then when we wrote the report, we actually tried to make it as a high level as possible, so it would be easy for everyone from any background to read it and hopefully understand some of the things that we found and bring them into that conversation. Okay? And so in the sense of bringing that to the conversation...
so let's bring Liliana. Liliana Ferreira is joining us as a sign of times in remote. Probably if it wasn't for COVID, she would be here with us. Liliana Ferreira is the director of the Fraunhofer Research Center for Assistive Information Portugal and invited teacher at Faculdade de Engenharia da Universidade do Porto. Liliana has also an important work as a researcher, working with companies such as Philips Research, IBM, and Instituto de Engenharia e Telemática de Aveiro. Welcome, Liliana. The floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. I would like to start by greeting all the participants and thanking for this invitation and this opportunity to talk to you a little bit, discuss with you, well, the result of this important study that was published. And of course, I would like to start by congratulate the author or the authors by, well, taking the chance and risking to do this study, especially in times like the ones that we live nowadays. And the purpose that is presented in this report, actually the purpose of contributing and widening the discussion around AI that has already started, is indeed a very important contribution, a very important goal that I believe that is successfully implemented in this report. I would like to, go a little bit through the report and touch some points that were also mentioned in this discussion now, in this presentation that was done by the author. And I would like, of course, to start by the beginning, by the executive summary, by the conclusions that were presented. And there is an indication clear indication, a conclusion that Portugal has qualified persons and is well equipped to explore this technology from one side, and from another side, that the main issues surrounding its future uses and impact are common and around the world and not specific to Portugal. This comes also in the direction of what just has been said, that we need to talk about this. We need to have a wide conversation, discussion on the impacts of this technology, on the directions of this technology. And this is indeed a very important conclusion. But I would like to go a little bit back and talk about the part that Portugal has qualified persons. And this is shown through several, numbers, several results that we've been achieving in the last years. One of them, the fact that Portugal has been classified as a strongly innovative country, according to the European Innovation Scoreboard of 2020, but also the indications, and that we know also being in the area, that our research is made of intensive international cooperations, that we are increasing the capability of attract PhD students to our universities, and that the inclusion of qualified workers, knowledge workers in companies is increasing significantly in the latest years. And these are all positive signs. Of course, we also know that we still have shortage of qualified human resources to this area, and this was also represented. We need still to do a lot in this area, and at least we have the positive indication saying that we are going in this direction. But I would like to focus most of my brief comments on the second part of the report, the part of going from the academia to practice, to industry. This is also what we go through every day in our day-to-day activity at the Assistive Information and Communication Solutions Research Center of Fraunhofer Portugal. And touching some of the points that were mentioned, it is in the report. I also will try not to spoil a lot, but call the attention to some parts that I believe that needs to be indeed discussed. And there is a mention to some studies that indicates that understanding how AI operates and why it makes decisions is essential for the acceptance and the adoption of AI solutions. And this is, in fact, a critical topic, a topic that has been discussed. We know that the understanding of the AI solutions is absolutely essential, but I would argue, and I will argue also, that the understanding of the researchers, of the ones that develop technologies, the inclusion of multidisciplinary teams of people in the development of these technologies, and not just computer science or exact science researchers as myself, is crucial for, not only this adoption, but also to reply to this major goal of developing universally trusted technologies that have positive impact in the lives of people. And this is something that has been widely discussed worldwide. The European Commission has identified several principles of these trustworthy AI solutions. We talk about ethics, we talk about law, we talk about autonomy, control, but of course we also talk about explainability, about transparency, about data quality, about reliability. And it is also very important to see that in the report there is the indication that the Portuguese companies are aware of this challenge and are actually also discussing it and trying to implement it in their day-to-day life. And coming back to that point of indicating that this multidisciplinary research is absolutely essential, I would also argue that in this discussion that needs to be done on the impacts of AI technology on the society, there needs to be a discussion inside research institutions that are developing this kind of technology on how we are developing technology and how we are bringing our own values, our own principles to this technology. How are we creating technology that represents the way that we see the world and not the way that the user will see the world? And some of the examples that were given in this introduction, I believe, show very well the need for this. The case of the worker that was put it next to the machine to control it instead of in a more comfortable or efficiency-prone location is one of those examples. But if we enter, for instance, in the health area, mentioned as one of the areas in which AI is mostly applied, we identify several examples of huge evolutions that have the potential of reducing costs, of increasing prevention, of increasing the quality of the data that physicians have at their hand to make decisions. And these are absolutely essential and very important developments, positive developments that, for instance, in the time that we are living, make a huge difference. But we also have the other side of understanding how this data is, or how this information is being used to create, for instance, risk scores that will in the future determine our access to healthcare. And this is indeed very important. We see already some insurance companies that are giving or making some promotion or some advertisement on tools that allow to have a more active lifestyle, that allow people to have even discounts in their insurance rates when they use some apps or when they use some kind of device that can, promote a better lifestyle, a more active lifestyle. But there needs to be a discussion and regulation, very specific regulation, on how this data can be used and which impacts, how is the technology indeed going to be used in our future and determine our access to the most basic, activities of our life. There are other comments that need to be done. Probably we can do it after in the debate that we will have. This very interesting point that shows at the end of the report, when we understand that companies, most of them use what is called a simple AI in opposition to a black box AI, understanding that the gap between what research centers are developing, what academia is developing, and what companies actually are implementing is still very strong. The simple AI, the simple solutions, most of the time are exactly what are needed. Maybe not the Excel file, but a little more advanced technology. But also this topic of data is particularly important because it might be an obstacle when it's not there, but it also might be an obstacle when it's there. And the importance of knowledge and understanding what AI is makes all the difference, because I can have a lot of data, but data that doesn't have quality or data that needs a lot of processing. And the understanding of this is essential also for the acceptance and the adoption of companies of this AI technology. So I leave the rest of the comments for the debate. And for now, I thank you very much once again for this invitation.
We'll get back to you. Now we're having for comments Ana Sofia Carvalho. Welcome, Ana Sofia. Ana Sofia is a teacher and coordinator of the UNESCO chair at Universidade Católica Portuguesa. and also a member of the European Group of Ethics in Science and New Technologies and of the National Ethics Council for Life Sciences. Thank you, Ana Sofia. Please, your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sara. Ethics has been called to intervene within the framework of science, mainly in three different ways. First one, by imposing limits. The second one, through the elaboration of rules, thus in terms of regulatory actions due to mainly legal requirements. And last but not the least, through education and awareness. This last point, maybe, is the reason for this invitation that I would like to thank. Indeed, it's an honor to be here to discuss such an important contribution with persons that I respect and admire. As in the case of any technology, AI can be deployed both in a manner that increases human well-being and that may lead also to potential harm. To start, it is important to stress that, in my opinion, ethics is not useful if it degenerates into a mere repair of technical deficiencies and weaknesses of AI, or a stopgap and or after the exercise. But it is also not useful, and I think it should be stressed, if ethics aligned with the tech lobby agenda in order to whitewashing sensitive ethical issues. Ethics of artificial intelligence should not hamper the progress, but rather promote constant refocusing. What should I do? Together with how do I do it, should be the questions of choice and not necessarily what can I do. Therefore, in our opinion, an ethics by design approach should be applied through all the process of development, from the initial idea until their application in society. After reading this book, it seems that Portugal is well placed in size AI opportunities, fortunately. It has been reported that this new wave of artificial intelligence could boost growth in Europe economic activity by close to 20% by 2030. We really need it. Therefore, while AI could create a great opportunity for Portugal and Europe, it also implies certain risks of which policymakers should be increasingly aware. These may need specific and target governance that provide appropriate safeguards to protect individuals and society. This book, indeed, could represent an excellent contribution to this mission. In this line, it is for me somewhat puzzling that the Portuguese research and academic centres, which the mission and objective are exhaustively described by the authors, did not mention ethics. This is even more strange when, in its various communications on artificial intelligence, the European Commission has set out its vision for AI, which is trustworthy and human-centric, with a goal to improving individual and society well-being and worthy. In fact, the only words that have some ethics flavor appear in the mission of Fraunhofer, and I'm quoting, "This center also addresses legal compliance," that is not the same as ethical compliance, but okay, it's there, "from its initial stages of development to ensure that datasets bias and unfairness are minimized and that transparency of machine decisions, as well as that of their solution have positive impact in the world. Also, Lumlis from Technico said that, I'm quoting, aims to contributing actively to defining and executing the European artificial intelligence strategy in the next decade, fostering the rapid development of AI technologies and promoting their use for addressing social challenges and maximizing economic impact. As already stated, in building a future with artificial intelligence, the point of departure should be human centricity. By placing the human at the center of our thinking, we underscore the fact that artificial intelligence is not an end in itself, but a means to enhance well-being and freedom of people and society. The authors underline in page 29 from 31 some breaches in the human-centric approach using several examples. The author stated, and I need also to quote, when dealing with people, our societal values requires that bias is not present for issues such as, among others, gender, race, age, religion, and sexual orientation. Artificial intelligence systems, which depend mainly on input data to train their function, are doomed to repeat most of the bias present in a set of training data. In fact, the examples that are provided in this section of the book illustrate that, if not applied in a true-worth manner, AI systems could cause adverse impacts to individuals, such as unjust discrimination or bias. Therefore, adequate protection should be put in place to counter such impacts. In addition, only a person-centered approach could guarantee full compliance with the principle of equality and non-discrimination that is central in the constitution traditions of most member states and also in the European Commission law. I also have some questions regarding the impact of the GDPR in artificial intelligence. And it's interesting that the results from the interviews with relevant stakeholders, the authors in page 42 underline that no matter the nature of the project, there is a heavy bias toward considering that any use of personal data is immoral until proven otherwise. This gives innovators in the EU space very little incentive to invest in developed solutions when compared with other geographical regions. In fact, when we discuss artificial intelligence policies, it's hard not to talk about the general data protection regulation. That's because GDPR has had the most impact to any law globally in terms of creating a more regulated data market. While data is the key ingredient for AI application. Certainly, the GDPR and AI confluence raise intriguing issues in policy-related conversation. However, in my opinion, the GDPR and artificial intelligence are neither friends nor foes. The GDPR does, in some cases, restrict or at least complicate the processing of personal data in the IA context, but it may eventually help to create the trust that is necessary for artificial intelligence acceptance by consumers and governments as we continue to progress toward a fully regulated data market. When all is said and done, GDPR and artificial intelligence could indeed be lifelong partners. Their relationship with the mature and solidify as we see more artificial intelligence and data-specific regulation arising in Europe and globally. Maybe, as stated by the former Commissioner Carlos Moedas, citizens around the world now realize how their personal data can be misused. Publicity around the case of Cambridge Analytica and the recent misuse around all the debate about COVID tracing applications and mechanisms dramatically increased this awareness. This is why, in his opinion, adherence to European privacy principles suddenly became an important marketing tool for companies. High protection standards are becoming a competitive advantage for companies that operate in Europe and adhere to these standards.
Thank you, Anna. I think maybe it's a good message for you to finish. Do you agree with it?
Yes.
Or do you want to wrap up with something?
In a minute. Only 1 minute.
I give you 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds is enough. As stated by André King, in contrast with smart cards, the future will never be able to drive itself. But, as João Castro and Vasco Teles did, with the support from Fundação Francisco Manuel dos Santos and Google, we all should assume our responsibility to make the world a better place. Thanks for your contribution to a best future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution too. João, maybe we should start. Maybe you want to comment on those
Sure.
aspects that Anna...
Okay, so yeah, I'll start off with the most recent one with Ana Sofia, and then go to some of the ideas that were shared by Liliana as well. And they are kind of like, if we built an onion surrounding this document, hopefully that it could be one of these points. These are some of the issues that we need to take into account. And how do we approach this technology? How do we make use of it? And the culture that is behind it also varies dramatically. And we need to, and I think that's why in the report, and because of all the different people that I talked about, is like, we need to have these conversations. We need time to have these conversations. And here we're limited, and it's just the few of us, but there are different approaches in how to do this. And what we deem that is a responsible, ethical, a decent way of moving forward. And the GDPR definitely has set a precedent. And I had several occasions with peers from the United States where their approach to market is different. They laud it as that is a gold standard. That is something that is going to be as an example and a role model.
The data protection, just for our audience
so
to be...
general data protection
The general
regulation.
data protection regulation.
But that just makes a little bit of the contrast to something that we put in the book as well, because there's the European approach, the precautionary principle at play of let's be careful what we could do with this. Although in some cases, we don't even know what this technology is going to do. And even when we think that, okay, we're doing something that is completely unbiased, it is going to drive very biased results in the end. And only later on we'll be able to see them. But our principle is that we need to be aware that this might happen. And so the precautionary principle there. The American approach is much more of it's the market that's going to drive it, it's the economy. If there's money to be made, then it's worthwhile. Capitalism at its hardest. And then you have things like Facebook and things like that, where people are now commenting that, well, maybe that's not something that we really wish that we could have in terms of extracting and gathering all this different...
But after the damage is done.
After the damage is done as well. But I think it's good. Like, go, break things, and then...
And what is the Chinese approach? Because...
Chinese approach is a different one, which is probably the third one. And that was the third one that was shared by some of the people that we talked with, which is they say, hey, well, that's a more top-down one, where it's a mandated one. It's more of an engineering, build it, and then we will deal with it. And it's probably a little bit too aggressive and the way of doing things without concern. So it's not driven by the market. It's driven by a mission,
by ideology,
an ideology, if you will. And it's not having these conversations. So we don't see those conversations happening. At least with the Portuguese people are not seeing that. Those conversations are actually happening. And so this is, I think, is a very, very important point, is that we have these conversations, that these things happen. And so going to a little bit to Liliana's point of the type of people that we are being able to train and the quality that they have, yes, definitely we see that. I think that the Blowing Air Agreement revolutionized the academia in Portugal as well. I teach, and my classes have more than half of the students are international. Okay, and so that allows for a huge sharing of culture and values and everything. So we're also not very, it's not like, oh, we're very biased with a Portuguese point of view and that's what we're going to propagate. No, we are actually in this melting pot right now of mixing all those different things in these schools. We're training people at different levels. So I've come from a business school, or I'm at a business school, and the people I'm training, some of them want to dab in a little bit of programming and everything and understand how the machine works, but they're not going to be hardcore.
They're more business-oriented.
They're business-oriented. They're managers. They're trying to figure out what can
this bring to my...
And so I think that is our contribution to bring to this discussion. One thing, though, that we are training, hopefully, and companies are saying this as well, is like we are training quality people, but we're not training enough people. And so there's a huge scarcity.
This is a worldwide problem.
And then it's a worldwide problem. The thing is, a lot of so we train a lot of international people that some want to stay, some want to go abroad. That would be just very normal. But what the companies are telling us, hey, yes, you guys are training good people.
Good people.
But they're all leaving.
They're leaving.
Because then they operate in a global market. And so that's a big challenge for those who are playing from Portugal, doing all that and having all these different missions of what they're trying to do. But it's also that the stage now is for this is a world stage, right? We have all these different three main geographies, if you will, of different approaches to how to do this. But everyone, so the field is common for everyone, and so happy to see that we're doing things from Portugal, that we're not ignoring something that has the opportunity to have a magnitude of impact at such a large scale that this technology can have, that we're addressing it. We're not trying to be...
With our eyes blind and...
We're not ignoring it. We're not trying to be fast seconds, meaning that someone else is going to...
And we're just going to copy it.
...bear the cost of developing and experimenting and failing, and then we'll take, whenever it works, then we'll take it. No, we're actually part of that game.
So do you consider that artificial intelligence is an opportunity for a small country like Portugal? That
it has innumerous opportunities to be used. Liliana mentioned medical.
Yes, I'd like to hear right? Liliana on this subject too, and on the skills, because we have been talking about artificial intelligence and big data and data. They often come together, but the skills are not necessarily the same. Someone that is skilled for artificial intelligence is not necessarily skilled for dealing with data, interpreting data, and what is your opinion on that? I'd like to hear you. And on this question of attracting these talented people and making them stay in Portugal.
Yeah, well, this second one is a hard one. I mean, I agree.
The $1 million question.
Exactly that. We are training qualified people. We are educating, and I mean, that is recognized internationally. We don't have enough people. You are right. Worldwide, there is a shortage of people qualified in this area. We need indeed to understand how we can increase this and how we can attract. Of course, this is a question or a topic that depends on so many levels that is hard to answer with a simple question. But of course, it also has to relate with the country, with the conditions, with the challenge that we are presenting to them. Well, we would enter in a lot of places. But when you come to the knowledge, the capability of dealing with data, the capability of being an AI expert, they are not necessarily the same. And I would agree. And in this sense, I would come back to this need of multidisciplinary teams. And this is absolutely essential, well, in a lot of areas, but in this one is one of the most essential ones. I normally call them the part of the data, the people that are qualified to analyze the data, to describe the problem as the need knowers. Those are our need knowers, and they have to work with from day one in the development of the AI solution. We need to understand, for instance, if we are working in a project in healthcare, then we need physicians, we need health professionals, we need informal caretakers, we need the users, we need all the people, the range, the full circle of people that will be involved in the development, in the utilization of the technology to make sure that we can develop technology that will be useful. You have a lot of examples that are coming. For instance, one of the trends that we see is the development of a lot of applications for mental diseases or mental disorders. And we see how some of them are represented using very structured definitions that represent entirely what comes in a mind of computer scientists and doesn't represent exactly the complex structure or the complex implications of the disorder that we are analyzing. And this needs to be done exactly with all the stakeholders in the process. And when we talk, and I come back to the examples that were given in the beginning, when we talk about this knowledge that is needed, for instance, in health, we talk in a manufacturing plant, an industry plant, in which, as the example that was given, that a person was sitting next to the machine watching. This is exactly the same. We need the knowledge of exactly what are we doing, which kind of interaction will be needed with the machine so that we can better design the technology itself, the AI itself, to request human input, in this case, in the way and in the moment that is needed.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but there's one question that I would like to address to all of you, maybe, which is the social debate. We have been discussing this, the need for a social debate to bring artificial intelligence to the public, because it's settled in academia, it's settled in some companies, but not for the public. Anna mentioned this in a way. Don't you fear, isn't there the risk that bringing this discussion to the general public might exacerbate irrational fears and misconceptions? We've seen it. We see this every day with the COVID and the vaccine and all these stories around the COVID.
Yeah, so I get that, and I think about that a lot of times, right? We live in the age of information, right? Yeah. There's so much available at fingertips.
But good and bad. There are real information or fake. Good and bad.
There's fake.
There's fake.
But we live in the age of information, but I think someone else has coined this. We actually are not living in an age of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
There's so much out there, and we're not thinking through that. I think we should drive for a society where actually take everyone in and take in their opinions. But that takes time. That takes an enormous amount of work, but we share with people, and everyone's involved. It's not just the ivory tower, those who know, the sage people that know and know. This is going to impact all of us, and so we're all in this together, right? And so I would drive for that. Maybe it's an impossible, it's a utopia to think that we could do that. But maybe we can take all these different tools to actually help us achieve that. What Liliana was talking about, that we have the simple AI, we have the black box AI where we don't understand what's happening, but then we actually have people already working on explainable AI, so we actually can understand what's happening there. We need to understand what these things are there, because they're not going to go away. This is not a technology that I think that is probably the fear part of this, is that this is a technology that's not going to go away. It's not something that you can put and hide it.
Let's just hear Anna, a very short comment on this, please. Can you do it?
Yes.
A short comment.
I will try.
Clock is ticking.
Yes, it's true that we need to be very careful in the way of public involvement within these discussions. First, because we need to avoid the cycle of hype, saying that everything will be solved with artificial intelligence. And we also need to avoid the cycle of fear that artificial intelligence will ruin society and will ruin jobs. So we need to be very careful, and I think here the mass media really have a special role in trying to involve society without creating fear or hype about the future of artificial intelligence.
Yes. So this debate shows that we do need more debate. We do need more discussions on this topic. There's the need, there's the interest, and for me it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for those who joined us. Thank you for those who are listening. Stay tuned. Thank you.